All right, we're live. We're live. Are we? Okay.
I need more batteries.
That's Zach's Pro unit.
It's you know, this crazy curved wall, the gap at the top, and then the big vent. It locks onto this vent.
So Zach, you do want to do the live demo, but the streaming version.
I think so, yeah. We'll give it a shot. And then we can use
And then if it, I'll keep an eye on the screen if it doesn't do something.
Yeah, this would be
It should be.
How long is your video that you can?
About 2 minutes.
I think we'll show that first.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And be like, this is how it normally goes in a house.
Yep.
In here in this technology environment, we're gonna just get everything.
We're gonna try to do it in here?
Yeah. Yeah. He likes those doors. Hates this stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing is.
I should go outside and scan the benches.
Some markers.
It doesn't need markers. It just these things it's gonna train down. So it's like go to the top of the wall. I'm like, it's right there. It's like, oh, you mean this bench? I'm like, no.
You're ready in a sec here. I'm just making
told
a
me that,
quick
man.
slide here.
Because you know, like right next toilets, where there's box around, you know, they're crazy shapes. Oh, it's been trained on us.
Or common shapes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily half wall with a curved fence.
Curved half walls with industrial venting and no ceiling. Girders from dumping down. Corrugated roof. Yeah, it's that also won't be doing anything. Although on the other hand, the Cisco, it's still like quite good. Right.
All right, so we did that right, and then
It could be like, I think there's this top of a wall here. It's like, no, it's here. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Well, that's the thing, when you do it, don't you kind of like 1, 2, 3, I mean, because it thinks that you're still going up, now it's not here, right? You kind of make it, yeah.
oh, that's the audio, so it's playing. Perfect. So,
Corner.
all right, we're going.
Corner. What do you think?
That's all manual.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. It's
The
just-
iPad's also fast.
Actually, I like mine away.
All right. We have, you have.
Well,
that. A few heavy metals never hurt anyone, right?
I was supposed to get a real production one, and they died. So we never got that far. It still works. I've talked to a few people else that got them, and most of theirs are dead. So whatever is causing the electronics burning eventually kills it. So.
Ultra fuel. No longer was.
I have to take it apart. It's all like glued together.
Mouse.
Where they're working. Yep. Yeah, where there are contacts, it does not.
Huh. Smart.
It's just weird not to have anything to do frantically.
That means get ready for 701.
Yeah. Something's gonna break.
At some point you do get good at this stuff. I'm impressed last minute's streaming box.
Me too.
That's a bold one for sure.
Just weren't having the Discord or Teams.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I fucking hate Discord. Every time I get on there, the microphone doesn't work. Like literally every time.
That's my experience with Teams.
Really?
Say hi to the stream.
That's three.
Everybody wave. Look lively. Hey, there you go.
So much energy.
You guys are really an inspiration.
Did you make it early, Zach, or just get here later?
Oh, I was just, let's do till, it's according to plan, David. But this is a good plan too. The bummer that we started late, so we'll never make it over there in time to eat.
Where's Steel Toe? Which way?
2 parking lots that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And they actually have IPAs and non-IPAs.
Okay.
A little number. The place we've been going is called Bunnies. It's about
Oh, funny.
3 minutes south.
Is that what we went to last time?
Yeah. That's pretty good. Yep. Works. That might be nice. Like it's not super hot. Yeah, it is still set up. different things. They swap the lenses. It's like, no, you don't. You're in a clean room.
It's super.
You don't swap the lenses.
It's super confusing.
Yeah, so Snapdragon's been pushing real hard to get XR1s in the headset and either XR2 for dedicated in the puck or just a PC.
Yeah.
And then most XR1 just does decode and time warp.
Like the HTC Flow, the Vive Flow. That's nice.
Yeah, so they might actually end up with something that will also incorporate the Qualcomm software. That was one of the big deals. AWH, Qualcomm, Spaces, they called it Spaces. All these features, nobody was showing them.
Yeah, there's no way that's going to work. Just Samsung makes something terrible.
Their hardware dev kit was from Lenovo, and it's a $1,500 thing that looks exactly like Unreal.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
$1,500 for
And then you gotta get a $700 phone to grab it. Because XR1's only for space, time warp space warp. Video decode. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like the Vive Flow will end up being the thing they want way ahead of time. So they got some nice people. They must know all the plans everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the first lenses on the market. It's like, yeah, but here's this stuff. What are you guys selling? What's the marketing angle? Does it work with iPhone?
Yeah, right.
I've used the Qualcomm SDK for the Type C.
Yeah.
They built these and all that.
And it's interesting because for a long time they talked about the links, room scanning, Qualcomm. But then they say they're going to support OpenXR, and that's all you need to do to integrate is XR. We'll see.
I hope you get one in July because you'll be the first thing to tell us how to do that. What's the best headset now for like a browser?
For a reasonable price, probably the Euro
It's got like,
That's too big, right?
something like that. Yep.
it's not quite as high as resolution as their main.
Yeah,
So, and it doesn't have illumination.
And it doesn't require support.
It doesn't have handrails. As far as optical resolution, it's highest. It's super fun. And they use the C. That's actually.
I'm just sold on all of them. Like I'm waiting for Project Keys.
Yeah.
This is like Apple's thing whenever they come up with that. I can't wait to see it.
As long as it's fast.
You guys watch the
If it's AR, it's Apple.
The latest, I've seen it sound like faster, obviously like very high resolution.
got a lot of attention.
It's gonna be 3,000.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. So like if they like if they think about like the last ready that concept, what they made it expensive and better. I think having a really great device that was responsible for too much price goes better to me than trying to get some mass market.
It's interesting that.
right now it does for sure.
It's interesting that especially that public sentiment that everyone who's carrying around a phone has multiple cameras on it.
Yeah.
The pair of glasses that has one camera on it was like punch in the face worthy.
Yeah.
I mean, just the public perception of that device.
But also you don't want to go faster. You do get much.
But you are, if you're just on your phone and you're walking around, you technically are.
No, yeah.
So then there's the
Broadcasting of wisdom.
and the social cues.
And like this is different. Say if you someone walks
I feel like I
up
need to
just
just
like this,
Does it you like different regressions and this is pattern of placement of the camera.
or if someone's doing this, like you, it's really interesting. It's like you're pointing a gun like in a secret place, right?
Did you watch from Thursday? Go to the
Good stuff.
yeah, Doctor's House.
I saw all of it. I didn't hear it.
It's worth all that.
so different.
I think the reserve is usually there's an Android version coming.
Huh.
It's got to be less than better, like sense of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Which Android? Oh.
Right, yeah.
Samsung. And also.
I saw another third-party one that has some interesting automation, and it is like they calculated like a base volume, and then they positioned like markers, like a grid around it. So as you're moving your camera, you would like tick off what you got. So it made sure that you basically covered every single angle.
Yep. Everywhere else, it shows you like the igloo and you're what the thing you used a long time ago.
The original Qualcomm.
Yeah.
Optics scanner.
It's just like the hardest part about programming. So overlapping.
Yep.
It's just
About every point.
it's so
Have you tried that one very much? Every point that I always, the guy that has done the most complainer stuff on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
He's the evangelist slash everything.
Okay.
Dev lead. Dev relations lead.
Okay. Oh, every point?
Yep. For expensive without a phone? Definitely. With a phone,
Well, what's the go-to that real estate uses?
they showed a couple of them at the Microsoft conference. There's one that's actually small. It's got a big ass battery that spins and shoots lasers.
That's the one I got.
Yeah. Just recently.
Yeah, that's the one that runs my
But it's like stationary.
But I mean, it's got like automation. You can like set it. But the Google we're offering the model often it's like one of the better ones, I think. It suffers from all of the shortcomings of photogrammetry. Everyone's trying to scale through. In your house, bad. Shiny objects in my house is minimalist. It works for most of the walks. So you need to like strategically build your space because everything is mad. So like, it's like this one scans perfectly every time. Every surface is kind of optimized. The windows are opaque. Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end, it's a whole house.
And that's where it kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like trying to do that. I saw that.
And somewhere in here, it's super dark.
Yes.
So I don't know anything about this software. It does point clouds.
Right. Hey, I do this too.
Really gonna integrate this. Yeah, I'm not working now.
Yeah, the neat thing is like it doesn't mean it's especially when you have to say cut across good or bad.
Yeah.
That. So like edit exactly what's going to happen.
It's a measure. You can measure without trying to estimate it.
You were going to build a mining performance. You wanted to recreate
Yeah, so like recognizing toilets, totally not a thing you should be able to scan, but it's been trained on. Ignores mirrors, it's hard.
You don't want 40
Yeah. Nice little box.
Yeah, when I did my whole house like a year ago now, I remember that it was about 8,000 qualities. But even the Quest One did a pretty good job of connecting to the last week.
Here's it. Yeah, but the wall.
I'm so confused. Are they correct? I don't know, but they're certainly square. They're 90s.
hand that off to your ARKit6. Custom cabinets.
Good enough for my name. Yeah.
estimating paint for sure. So.
Rough.
I mean,
Roughly
roughly
get
this
rid
wall
of
is
it.
3 inches shorter.
Yeah. We get the
Doesn't
couch
account
fit.
for the fact that it's arch on the ceiling.
And it's really good at TV. There's too many in here.
Yes.
Like clearly that's a use case. I want to buy a bigger TV.
We've used that like when we were remodeling and space and stuff. Sony has an app that's not very good, but like, what size TV? The answer is always like the biggest one there is. Or no space. Like, oh, that's big enough. Like, no. Best Buy actually has a pretty decent express too for the TVs, like the size of them. It's like every pizza is a personal size pizza.
Yeah.
Pull a Wally, just get a magnifying lens. Small TV, just get your lens. It's too big. Bigger lens.
I looked at getting a giant Fresnel. There was a year. It was probably during COVID.
Your son had it. Do you mean like the projection TV ones? Like those?
Yeah. Yep.
They melt rock.
Yeah, I know. That's what I stopped.
If I ever see one on the side of the road, I'm grabbing it to do that with my dad for sure.
Yep. Yeah, you get metal and rock and asphalt. I just wanted a TV to be a nice parallel, like not to get the depth data destroyed, so it looks like it's a window instead of a TV.
Okay.
So I was watching the space station feed kind of constantly for a while.
Oh yeah, the ISS. That is pretty cool and just have on the background.
Yeah, you get sunrise, sunset, and then it cuts out over Australia and then it comes back. Potentially or whatever. But, yeah, I looked into it. Yeah, there's sun danger. That's for your underground layer, not for your.
Picture you're carrying it like out from your car and just lighting all your grass on fire.
I got a new TV. Well, what will this do? Put it in front.
Right.
You saw when you were back in Newton's Quest, right?
No.
Oh yeah, sun. He left it out in the sun.
Yeah, it was his
Oh.
car.
All right.
And the sun hit the lens and it melted the LCD.
Yeah.
That's proof. Let it do. But if you want to
Did you see those old lighthouses over there?
This one was pretty
It's
expensive.
like 18 feet across. So, and if you point it big up in the sun, you can burn through there.
Let's try it.
What?
I would take apart the whole white circle.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them will take the whole
Oh, some of
It
them
will
are
just
put
do
together.
the
It's great.
instead of the if this one apart, it will just do the line.
In the video I saw, the guy just basically like peeled it off. He's like, here it is. Whoop, 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 you know, like. But yeah, that's the way we're going. That'd be fun.
All right, Zach, 1 minute. Yeah, that's what I used to do. Yeah. Always looking. It's like
Hey,
I could tell when I made the switch.
how are you, man?
Hey, good. That to this. I could tell.
What's new in Puzzle Fox?
Hard to tell.
I don't know. I haven't been in there in a while.
How are you able to display 33
You're front and
slides?
center.
I'm trying to find.
Yep. Your cords will cut off. Being crouched. There we go. Perfect.
Now
Perfect.
just hold that for 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh,
Feel the burn.
get on my knees. No, we've been. We sort of spun it off, and now we're working on a multiplayer game
Oh, very cool.
idea. So it's funny because it's still in the same project. Because the idea was that we're just going to build another room, and then be able to go into Puzzle Fox Park, and then we can step in. But it's like, because yes, there's so much baggage, and there's also like anything we want to do that's really specific to the game. And it's like, wait a minute, how is this going to affect? Oh no, how is this going to affect when you're in with the fish? Or how, you know, so we're sort of doing that right now. But it's cool. I mean, we're taking everything we learned.
That's the whole idea, right? It's like you make that thing and you know what we should do and like all the things you can make that.
Totally, yeah. I just take and be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? What if we could do that? Oh, well, let's just do that. So.
What if we could display 33 slides? Let's not.
No.
Yeah, did you ever track that one down?
No, no, it's a feature, not a bug. We like to keep it short.
Yeah, there you go.
Were you able to reproduce it?
Oh
I
yeah,
like
we
that
did.
answer you test.
Yeah.
You passed that.
Yeah. We did have the idea that we would. The next step would actually be to have slide sets so that each person can have their own slide. So instead of them all just being in one, you could just have. You just go up and you hit your name, and then it pulls up your slides. or 32 slots.
That's cool. Was it a limit on the memory or DRAM or something?
I don't know. Dave would have to answer that question.
Did you fix it?
Did you fix that null issue? Just kidding.
Oh,
was
all
awesome.
my stuff works 100%. I don't know what he's talking about.
There you go. Then all my stuff works 100% too.
Where's the mic? There's a mic.
That's your mic.
Is it hot? Hot mic.
Yep, you're already live.
All right. Crank this bad boy around.
Yeah, so you play it around to yourself.
Crash.
Zach, you stand on that.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, a little low. Welcome everybody. We're gonna get rolling. Welcome everybody on the stream. I know we got some regulars out because they caught the vid. Hope you're feeling okay. Thanks for not coming here. We got a little bit of a grab bag today. June was a huge month for VR and AR meetings for whatever reason. So we're going to kind of walk through a variety of things. First up, Marc Jensen's going to tell us about what's new from the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference, where they did not debut a new headset, but they made some cool software updates. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Quest Spatial Understanding APIs, which have a terrible name. That's called Scene. And then we're going to just kind of have a grab bag, but we're going to have it kind of led by Nick. Is it Roseth or Roseth? Roseth. Who actually got to go to AWB, put the headsets right on his own face. Thank you. Yeah, we'll watch the YouTube stream. If you got questions, we'll try to keep an eye out and try to answer them. So let's get rolling here. Oh, where's the slide deck? Right there. So MNVR and HCI is a spin-off from the International Game Developers Association Twin Cities chapter. And we organize all our events as part of an all-volunteer board. That's us. And David's doing all the heavy lifting here on the tech for our VR meetings. And if you're interested, if you got any ideas, things we're not doing well, things you want to do especially, come talk to us. We have, separate from the board even, we have volunteers running a bunch of different initiatives. Here's our regular schedule. We fixed on Wednesdays a number of years ago. Our original game dev meeting is always the second Wednesday. On the third Wednesday of each month, we have a Twin Cities playtest. If you want to, if you got a prototype video game or board game, they'll help you find people to play that for you. And then the fourth Wednesday right now is the MNVR and HCI meeting. So anything VR, AR, which is maybe going to become affordable this year in a consumer way. And then HCI, human-computer interaction, any unique kinds of interfaces with cameras or Kinects or what have you. And we are live here and also broadcasting on YouTube for the people watching there. If you do want to become a member, be sure to mention our chapter. We get a little money kicked our way when we hit enough people. It's not required at all for any of our meetings. They're completely free and open to the public. All right, plugs. ESC. Where's Brian? I can barely see you. Talk into this.
Speaking of the microphone.
Yeah, that.
Hello. Awesome. Well, for everybody who came last month, you've kind of heard this spiel, but it's kind of nice because we're right in the week leading up to ESC, which is the Experiential Sensory Collective, hosted right here at REM 5. We've got a few of the artists who have been a part of it before, but basically what we do, and kind of a part of our larger mission here at REM 5, is how do we connect super cool things that people in the community are doing and make them accessible and have a really fun time. So basically, ESC is our art party, right? So this whole space is turned over. We get the lights down, get the live music going, and then every day people get to come in and demo a bunch of really crazy art experiences. So some stuff I'm really excited for. This one, again, this Saturday from 7 to 11 p.m. If you can make it, that would be awesome. And if you have a demo or an experience you want in a future event, talk to me because I would love to show it, right? I mean, a lot of the digital stuff or in-headset experiences, like it's really hard to actually get that to people. I mean, you can throw it on App Lab or you can try to just put it out to the void, but like here, you get real people in there and you get to get feedback and it's a really fun time. But this time we have some scent involved because it's a sensory collective. So we've got a lady who does scent with sculpture. We've got a couple of our VR artists. We're going to have Philip and a bunch of other VR artists doing live tilt brush, Sketchfab, not Sketchfab, Gravity Sketch, and a couple other programs. The graffiti one, I'm losing it here. Live in the space. So you'll just have to come and see them, basically live VR art every 30 minutes from a bunch of artists. So also Bradley, who I don't think is here tonight, the big orange dance machine will be parked in the parking lot, which I'm super excited about. So again, from once you come in the doors, a lot of really cool stuff to see. So get in touch, or hopefully I'll see you guys on Saturday.
Hey, what's that say?
Oh yes, use the code MNVR and you get $10 off. So it's a pretty good price. We got beer and food all night long too. It's also family friendly. We've had literal infants here before. So the music of the night is going to be synthwave, so kind of like video game retro inspired. So I think it'll really be unique, and every single time, new experiences, new artists, all that good stuff. So
Great. Thanks.
I'll see myself out.
Yeah, I didn't go to the last one, but I went to two sessions ago. It was pretty great. And I think there's 3 or 4 people that I remember have already bought tickets for that thing from this group. Hey, what's this, Nick? Sorry, got you flat-footed there.
All right, we're doing plugs.
Yeah, right about here. There.
All right.
Perfect. Here's what we're showing them.
All right, cool. So just to give a quick plug for VRARA Summer Social that we're doing next week at Lake Monster. No specific topic other than talking about some of the stuff that I saw out at AWE a couple weeks ago. But just a reason to bring the community together, have some drinks, similar to something that we did here last winter. So we're planning on doing something like that maybe a couple times a year. This one we're going to do at Lake Monster. So hoping to see as many XR folks in the community out next Wednesday as we can. And if you're interested in learning more about VRARA, it is an organization, it's a global organization that is continually growing, 30,000 plus members across the country. There's regular online meetups crossing everything from the XR space. They're doing some new stuff around cryptos and NFT markets, that kind of stuff. There is a healthcare conference I'm hoping to be participating in later this year. There is a global summit in Florida in December. I have found it a really great way to connect with folks outside of the Minneapolis market, because there's tons of really big markets all over the world, here, Canada, Europe, APAC, doing a lot of really interesting things. So I would definitely check out VRARA if you guys have any questions about the organization, becoming a member. Definitely hit me up and try to make it out to our summer social next Wednesday.
And you did an online event at the Mayo a couple months
Yeah,
ago.
we did. So the head of XR at Mayo Clinic, one of the most fascinating talks I've heard on how XR is evolving in healthcare at one of the world's highest tier healthcare organizations in the world is pretty sharp.
And that's available on demand, I think?
Yeah, that's online. So if you check out, or you could always just shoot me an email. We are on Twitter, so links are probably on Twitter and on LinkedIn. But definitely check that out if you get a chance. It's a really good perspective on how it's evolving in healthcare. I'll talk a little bit later about what I saw at EWE. But that healthcare space is definitely a big one. We're also looking later this year to do some sort of a session around XR in the AEC industry with another person in town that's working to build kind of a space to get hands-on with some of the tools in XR and construction.
Great. And what's the whole acronym, AEC?
AEC is Architecture, Engineering, and Construction.
Excellent.
So everything, it's kind of a spectrum the way I see it, everything from the head of HP at AWE talked about it as kind of before the job site being very VR focused with architecture, and then on the job site with AR doing actual hands-on construction.
Okay.
So cool, yeah. If anybody's interested in VRARA, definitely hit me up.
Yep, we'll hear more from Nick in a little bit.
Thanks, sir.
Anybody else? Verbal plug? Anything at all? We got a microphone. We got a camera that's aimed not at me anymore. I'll aim it at you though, Patrick.
Now that's the content.
We got a backlight problem out there. You guys are
We do this all.
getting the skinny limbs from the backlight. All right, moving on then. Gotta get back to the slides. First up, presentation, Marc Jensen from Space 150. Come on down. I'm gonna do this little video swap thing, whatever you did.
Yeah, I
So this
I
is-
saw you wince when he did that.
I know, and it worked. So this is for the mic for the video stream.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be very close at all.
Okay.
And you can see levels here if you wanna. pick a
Keep an eye on
spot
that.
for it.
Okay. And waiting for this to come back up. Do I need? There we go. Looks like we're working.
And then in terms of cameras, do you want it on your laptop or maybe on this one?
On that one's probably good. Yeah.
So untangle this guy. Clamp. Rotate.
Nice.
Rotate. Let's rotate the whole base. Good thinking.
There we go.
I know that guy.
I can move over here once you leave. There we go. Nice.
You want me to leave?
Nope, not at all. First time the streaming box is running tonight. Congrats on that success. Are we all set?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
I've got you up here as soon as when you want to switch to full screen.
Oh, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah. Why don't we just do that now?
Just say, yeah, okay, yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Turned into our phones, and it's slowly going to turn into a pair of glasses you put in your face. So I really dig that. And I think the interesting question to ask isn't like, tomorrow we know tomorrow will be different, but how? Zach, I bet you know what this is, right? So I'll let you talk about that, but you can just see what it's really interesting. This is a story about Facebook and a recent kind of developer discussion they had on how they build headsets to talk about one specific thing or deal kind of like explore deeply in one problem. And they're crazy, but they're just designed to show them like what would it be like if it was HDR, or if it was really thin, or it was retina resolution. That's what these are, and they have this terminology. They call it like building time machine into the future in one aspect, and I just thought that was really cool. Anything to add to that, or?
No, that's great.
Okay. And so Apple specifically, and Apple's WWDC used to be this in-person event that was just meant for people that develop iPhone apps or Mac apps, and the Mac is such a small market, it's really about iPhone, right? Before COVID, this was basically an in-person event that you would try to win a lottery ticket to. Essentially, you would sign up, and about a few thousand people would get in, but many, many more times that would want to go. Now with COVID, it's online. Like first, it was online only last year. Now they had a few people at an event there, but it's where they talk about what they're doing next. And I think a lot of people, including people that normally investigate Apple rumors, thought they might announce a headset there. Not to say like I had a better prediction, but it's hard to imagine they would release their next biggest thing ever as part of a developer event. It feels like it's going to get its own thing. Like if you remember the original iPhone launch, it was its own dedicated special thing, and Apple sees this as basically the replacement for our phones ultimately. So we'll see on timing of that. I have a little bit at the end on that. And yeah, just with the stakes involved in this, they're going to get it right and probably do it right. So we know Apple's bullish in augmented reality. I've talked about that every time we've been here. And for the last 7 or 8 years, Tim Cook has gone on, on the record saying we think it's the next big thing. We think it could replace our phones ultimately. And they're definitely working towards that. They've grown ARKit from the release in 2017, which literally allowed you to just put basically a virtual object on a real plane, to a whole lot more. And the way I kind of think about this is they're basically trying to figure out and solve all these problems. Where am I in the world and what am I looking at? They have things called spatial anchors where if you're in certain cities and that list is growing, you can hold your phone up, it'll know where you are. If you've used Google Street View on your iPhone recently or Android phone, you can just put your camera up, it understands where you are and kind of points in the right direction. It takes care of that last mile kind of on the street problem. an understanding of what I'm seeing. Is this a person? Is this a pet? Is this a dog? Is this a floor or wall? That kind of thing. And the ability to render realistic images on top of it, so the augmented part of augmented reality. And they've really done a good job with that. I think it's been a bit limited and focused compared to other tools out there, but you can create really realistic objects of many types, and we do a ton of that for our business. And then interact naturally beyond the screen. So if you think about having a phone, you look at the phone, you touch it directly, it's a keyboard there. When the phone goes away, it's going to be hands and gestures and voice and other things like that, eye detection. So they're building all this stuff right now, and some of it makes sense very much for mobile AR, but a lot of it makes, I think, more sense in the context of like a headset AR future that we're heading towards. And unlike Facebook allows their developers to talk about what they're doing. Apple does not allow that, so we have to look at, say, the companies they're buying in the AR and VR space, which is growing, seems like every month, and all the patents they're filing. So they don't go on record, they're very careful about what they say, so we have to kind of infer that and kind of get at it a little less directly. And one thing I'll say is they're in a really unique position. They've had mobile AR since 2017. ARKit's grown a lot, I'll talk about that coming up. And their recent advancements in hardware, they are now basically the best chip maker in the world, and it's incredible what their M series and A series chips do, just how powerful they are for how little power they use. This is one of the new M1 MacBook Pros, and battery lasts forever. Like, I don't even bring a power cord anymore. It's just insane how good that is. And that's important when you want to put a little hot computer on your face. The more powerful it is and the less battery it uses, obviously the better. And they're spending a lot of energy in this space, I think, doing things that don't really make sense now but will make sense more in the future. And a good example of that would be, holding up a phone and tracking your hand. There's not a whole lot of uses for that, but when you have a headset on your face that's tracking your hands and it's your primary input, that's going to make a lot more sense. And obviously it makes sense to track other people and do things like that, but the real core use case to me is, the AR future for sure. So the highlights from this year's WWDC. They announced a few things just before WWDC in the accessibility space that I think also lead into the AR future. So one thing is if you're making a FaceTime call with somebody, you can it'll do live captioning. So as they're talking, you'll get a transcript live of what they say. Google announced something recently and it looks really great. Google's was kind of a concept pair of glasses, but the idea of talking to somebody and maybe it's a different language and then getting translated to you, really powerful. And these are coming to iPhone later this year. And the other is door detection, which is meant for people that have, vision impairments or vision issues. You can point your phone at a door, it understands, conceptually this is a door. And if it says something like the hours of this business that are open or the name of the business, it'll give that information to you. I think that's a super cool thing, and it's just a little peering into the future of what the AR world will look like. It's kind of crazy when you start thinking about that. Boy, can you go down the rabbit hole, and maybe afterwards at Funnies, right? Or at Steel Toe? Yeah. This is the list of kind of how ARKit's grown over the years. And I'm not going to focus too much on this, but you can see every year they've released and expanded quite a bit. This year they released, I would say, fewer things, but did some things to the foundation that are kind of key, and then added a few new things that I'll talk through here. So one thing is if you're a low-level developer, they've changed how plane anchors and planes are defined, and they've made this make a lot more sense. So it used to be in version 1, as soon as your phone started tracking the world around you, it would put an anchor down, and then that anchor would constantly shift based on the plane it was on as it understood more about the plane. You can see that here. And now they're basically keeping those two things separate. And again, this may not affect a whole lot of people, but it's just one of those things that it should have been like this from the beginning. Now it is. A lot of people are using higher level frameworks, so it's probably been abstracted away, but anyone here ever dealt with this? It's just weird when you see it happen. It's like this thing shouldn't be doing this. The other thing is they can now, you can run AR natively at 4K. So this is an app we did years and years ago with 3M. This is probably version, ARKit 1.0 or maybe 1.5. But it was showing off their materials in a realistic way. So what we do is basically simulate night using kind of an image processing technique and then use AR to put down their signs. And it showed the difference between, say, them and their competitors, or the difference between like good, better, and best. And this is limited to 1920 by 1080 at the highest. And in something like this, the higher resolution you have, the better, because you can take better screenshots, record better video, and like use this for sales, like do more things. So it may seem like not a big deal, but it is a pretty big deal. And as a developer, you can choose between kind of the normal HD res or the 4K resolution. And it does a thing called binning, basically, to bin that down. So if you have a low light application, you may want to stay at 1080p to get more light into those pixels. If not, you have the option of higher resolution.
And I think how they framed this up I thought was interesting is this is designed for specifically recording and filmmaking. So it feels like they're getting into the direction of making things look more realistic and also setting people up with tools to kind of use the phone as a production tool. And I think that is really interesting. We've done a bit of work with that where you can have virtual cameras and put objects on them later and get all that tracked data. It's really interesting, and I think they're building tools for that for sure. So the biggest thing they announced, I think that was most interesting, is something called Room Plan. And they've given it its own icon, which means it's an app that you'll be able to download in the future. And I want to go back a little bit. So this is basically about scanning a room and understanding the contents of that room or the structure of that room. And last year they announced something called Object Capture. And the result was basically a photogrammetry tool from Apple that showed you, here's how to use our framework. And their app was okay, a little bit clunky, but it just showed you all the steps. And it was really meant to like take inspiration from this and build a better app with it. And this is an example I talked about last year. This was it's a mountaineering boot I've got. And just by scanning it, using a third-party app, ultimately came up with this really great model that's honestly pretty hard to tell the difference between which one's real and which one's virtual. The object itself is something like 30 megabytes, so it's not terribly optimized, but I also said, do the highest quality scan you can. So they announced the framework for this last year, and ultimately a whole bunch of really great apps were created. This is my personal favorite. I've used it a ton. It's called Polycam. So if you have an iPhone or Android app, it's just amazing for LiDAR scanning, big spaces, objects. I can't say enough good about this, but Zach, you have one you liked also?
There's another called everypoint.io.
Everypoint.io.
And I don't know about the app because I don't have iOS, but their evangelist / dev relations guy is just gonzo for this stuff, and I get a lot of good info from him on Twitter.
Follow his Twitter for sure. Yeah, so I will definitely try that one out, but this one has been really great. It's amazing to use. The experience is really great, and you can kind of be really precise and take your time if you want. You can just be sloppy and take a video of something and it'll do an okay job. So it depends on what you're looking for, but definitely they gave a whole presentation on that, but I would definitely check that out. So this year, this is the little video they released to kind of show what Room Plan is. And I'll do a demo of this actually happening, and then we'll do a live demo. We'll see how that works in here. But basically, it's showing you moving your phone around, and then the LiDAR and sensors and camera sensors on the phone are basically determining the structure of the room and inferring information about that and defining things like walls, doors, countertops, desks, that sort of thing. And I think this is just like last year's, where Apple's app isn't the best, but other people are going to take this and make it better, and that's what I expect to happen. So this is an example of me running it in my office. My office is pretty typical. There's not a lot of weird stuff there. And what it'll do is you can see, this is like 2.5 minutes long, it's not real long, but you can see as it understands the structure of the room, it starts outlining it. And as you give it more information and show it the scene from different angles, it starts to get better at that. So it's also building a little 3D model, so you can basically see at the bottom of the screen there, that's its in-progress model, and it kind of continues to kind of grow, expand, or refine itself as you're doing your thing. And you'll see the window kind of pop in there as it understands it. That is a really cool effect for sure, and you're going to see some stuff from Zach that looks very similar, but is manually done, right?
Yep.
And it definitely didn't get it perfect for sure, but what you get out of this isn't a really high resolution, high density mesh or point cloud or something like that. It's a very simple CAD type model that can be pulled into a number of projects. So in Apple's example, they give you a USDZ file, which is their 3D kind of proprietary AR format. But developers can obviously take that and like export to any format that you want in the future. You can see I've got a HVAC duct at the top of the room. I didn't really understand what that was, so just kind of ignored it. Overall, pretty impressive though, for sure. And given that everything in there is white, just about, and shiny, not the best case scenario for things, but it seemed to understand, with LiDAR especially, the definition of the corners and things.
Did it ever become happy with your dual monitor?
It never did figure that out, no. And I think it's probably trained to understand, like, is there a monitor here? But why would you have two, right? Well, I want to. I'd like 3 actually, but yeah, exactly. So you can see this is the kind of final result, and you can also, you can grab that 3D file, do whatever you want with it, and also view it in a scale down. I think the scale is something like 25:1, or it might be centimeters to, I couldn't understand exactly what it was, but, and then you can see it also differentiates between the room itself and the objects in the room and the windows and doors there too, just by color. Has anyone else tried this out at all? To do this, you have to basically be running iOS beta, So it takes a little commitment, so I usually have an iPad that I do that on. So should we do, do you want to try a live demo here? Sure. All right, so I do a little screen switching here.
We're about to live demo an untethered iPad and
It's gone so smoothly so far, so why not?
this super industrial environment. Yeah, this is our first big challenge. David's worked out a lot of the kinks to get Macs and Quests and all kinds of things running.
Gotta get us onto this.
Do you want to talk mostly? Maybe to put this into perspective too, what you're not noticing in those slick videos is a lot of screw ups. To date, there's plenty of scanning apps out there, but they give you a polygon soup. They freak out when there's sunlight coming through the window. They freak out if there's a mirror, and they'll actually draw an extra room behind the mirror. It takes a lot of work to make that not happen.
Or a portal through the mirror, right?
Exactly, yeah. It scans the room behind the mirror and then overlaps it with whatever's behind that wall. There are definitely things that it doesn't understand, and then there's things that it makes no sense that it understands, like it can scan a toilet and get the exact boundaries, because clearly they want to sell some new toilets. You know, Lowe's and Home Depot are already making the apps for this.
That's the content people are here for. Yep.
Yep. But getting the right amount of paint for your walls, getting new lampshades that are the right width. That's kind of where it's aimed, I think, in the first iteration.
Doors, windows, yeah.
Yeah. And so this space, you'll see it here on the feed. Let me just give a preview. It's kind of a worst case scenario. I'll give you that.
Okay.
If you want to aim it at my face for a second. We've got really tall walls that are black and curved, and industrial ducts, and then a big gap and some girders from Donkey Kong, and a corrugated roof. So it really doesn't like this stuff, but if I head over towards the hallways and the bathrooms, it'll do a better job.
And can I follow Zach with this? This is good. Okay.
Yeah.
And you might want to hit cancel and start again.
Worked pretty good, yeah. We're going to start over here and get the garage doors, finish that up. But the other thing that's amazing is how fast it is. It just goes. And so I'll show it the wall here, and it hops to as soon as it finds the top and the bottom. I'll just give a little peek of the hallway. It's funny how awkward it is to walk around with an iPad.
It'd be better with our face.
Exactly, and wide angle cameras. So we did a sample earlier, and it was pretty cool with the garage doors, despite how bright it is out there. Is the video coming through? Or is that the first
Yep.
door?
No, it looks great, actually. Hold up well.
So the fact that it's not actually seen as I walk around, and then it remembers what it didn't see and then fixes it after the fact is super impressive. And this earlier, it's sort of like the outside. I think that's probably a challenge. All right. Oh, you're gonna the other way. Doesn't scan people, unfortunately.
It kind of sees through them in an interesting way, for sure.
And then we get a couple of TVs here. We have so many TVs to show off. There's a nice TV.
I'm already recorded.
I'm in AR on the TV. Excellent. We got this guy. There, I found that back corner that it hadn't seen for a while. We just went to sleep a little bit. There, we get up. 4 more tables. Now I think this wall will really freak it out because it doesn't go to the ceiling anymore. It's trying.
You kind of got that.
It's doing its best job. Oh, there, I found that duct. It loves that duct. It's just too contrasty up there. And then it doesn't do curved walls. There's no expectation that should work at all. So, yeah, let's call it good.
Then hit done, and why don't we save that one?
Done.
Okay. And then, yeah, you can just zoom around it, and then when you're done, I'll just disconnect here.
Yeah. So here's our 2 garage doors viewing outside. It's interesting that we got some windows behind our TVs. It wasn't able to reach high enough, I think, to show it what's behind there. But,
And if anybody wants this too, we can text this to you just so you can see what that looks like too, if you have an iPhone.
Hey, can you go back to that TV there in the corner?
Let's see here. There you go.
which one do you want to see?
No, that one in the corner.
The tall one, the vertical one?
It did it as horizontal. I noticed.
It's
Going
horizontal
through there.
on the video.
Oh yeah, it is. Interesting. See if I can,
So it is a TV, it's just,
half a TV.
why would you put a TV like that?
That's a good point, yeah.
Well, a lot of the AI and models underneath here go like, that's a TV, so what would make the most sense?
UI,
Right?
let's read that. It's definitely been trained on specific things. The guy for every point, like I said, this Gonzo for this stuff, he went to every room in his house and scanned the entire room. This one's full of toys. This is the messy garage. This is the bathroom. And in the bathroom, it's just stellar. It's finding cabinets. It's finding toilets. It's completely ignoring the mirror like it should. And then it gets to some French doors and it can't do it. It gets to an arch, either a peaked roof or an arched roof, has no clue.
Yep.
It really wants a nice flat roof inside your house. So.
Cool, we can wrap up here. But yeah, it's always good to see the glossy demos are one thing, but like to see it happen in practice, you can see like there's really cool potential, but it needs to be refined on for sure. So yeah, any other takeaways on that?
Maybe some questions. Anybody watching the YouTube stream for questions?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll export this one as a USDZ file, and then I can send that to you if you want to check it out for sure. This is because it's Apple's demo, but once other people get a hold of it, it'll be in every format, yeah. Yep.
I guess we should say too, it's pretty simplified. So everything is a quad.
Yep.
Out there, it's not a bunch of polygons.
Yeah, it's very like CAD friendly, I would say. Yeah.
I just want to say, it's kind of amazing because the last time I tried something like that at home to remodel a room, I put on my Vive headset and I drew the room in tilt brush. I think traced all the walls, and you know, it took like an hour or so to get everything just right, and to get the model out, to get it into Unity, so I could just, you know, this is crazy.
I'm
Yeah.
about to show you the Quest version of that. It's only like 10% better.
Yep. And you can have it on your head, right?
Yeah.
So I'll wrap up here. One thing I want to say though is this is not an image from Apple, but basically Apple set their bar high for what they want to do. So these are the latest rumors, and again, they could change for sure. But what I've heard, and most of this is coming from the information, that site, their big feature is they want realistic avatars in there, and we know how hard that is. Like, think about how many times Facebook's done that and how much processing power that takes. And they set the bar and said, we want to do something far beyond what other people are doing. And I think another interesting thing that people haven't really picked up on is the outside of that screen. So if I put on the headset, rumors are you would see video pass through essentially of my face, so that you wouldn't feel like you're looking at, you know, a dead person or someone whose eyes are covered up, but you'd see someone there. So that's going to be really interesting. I haven't really seen something like that. And it sounds like it's at least 14 cameras and sensors right now, which obviously sounds like that's going to be a hard thing to do and very expensive, right? Like, yeah. And then the other thing I'll say is they also, rumors are that they showed this to the board before WWDC. So that's a step they do, and typically they do that before a product is kind of ready to go into production. And it sounds like they did that before the original Apple Watch was released. So they're definitely getting there. And the latest rumor mills kind of show that there will likely be an announcement this fall for release sometime next year. So again, none of that's set in stone, but that's the latest. If anyone has any other information, it probably changed today, but that's accurate as of about 3 days ago, I would say. Yeah.
Have you heard about anybody integrating that, or that's going to wait until the OS drops probably?
You know, the OS has references to our OS, which is called Reality OS. And there are little things in there, but we haven't picked up a whole lot in these betas. I think they've gotten better at scrubbing that stuff, especially for a big product like this, for sure. So.
Cool. All right, we got an AV
Cool.
switch over here.
All right. Thank you. And I have this file, and if anyone wants to try it out, they're definitely welcome to, for sure.
Is that LiDAR?
This is, yeah.
It requires LiDAR, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna kill the stream. Get some slides going here. And some power. Power's good. This one.
That whole scan of the room was 40 kilobytes, so definitely very small amount. Not 40 gigabytes, 40 kilobytes.
All right. Actually going to start with, this is actually a very good.
Is that you want full screen?
I don't think so, because I've been messing with the Quest. All right, presentation. How many people got to try the, they call it the room plan? No, they don't call it the room plan. What do they call the? Yeah, so the app is called, Beyond, I don't know what it's called.
The World Beyond.
The World Beyond, there it is. How many people got to try that before the meeting? 2? Cool. Yeah, it's a nicely made app, and they've had plenty of time. They were showing off clips from last fall, from the last time they did a conference. So I need one USB cable. Here. Just to get rolling. Well, I meant to ask you, Mark, when you're bringing in those tables and things, is there a good option or not yet to grab a texture of the existing object or some kind of an image of it?
In this scenario,
Yeah.
I would definitely use something like Polycam, I think, to generate the
Regular
text. Although
scanning.
They end up being, if you look at the text tools, they're definitely like machine made, not person made.
Yeah.
But no, currently not, but I would expect that they're going to come up with that for sure.
Be a big differentiator, yeah, to get some color on that. Facebook's got the opposite problem. Nobody trusts them. And so the way that you scan a room is you do it manually by hand as the end user. And then as the app creator, you don't get access to anything coming through the cameras at all, ever. You get references to the things that the user has manually created. Set this down for a second. Does it stand up? No. All right, let's see if this guy's alive. That's not good.
Update?
Yeah, looks like an update, but why would it be doing that? Plus, it's not in the OS yet. It's the firmware still.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's like a rectangle with an arrow going down.
If it's
And
a firmware update, that's what we do.
why am I getting a firmware update?
It would show the firmware. Thought you were
Okay, it's booting now. Nice quick firmware update from somewhere. Yikes.
Maybe it'll run better.
How many, oops, that was the wrong click. That's Unity. How many Quest devs do we have here today? Got 4, 5, 6, 7. How many of you run ODH every day?
Yeah.
That's this thing. This is ODH. If you don't recognize it, you're not running it.
I'm using all
It's a big, weird looking GUI that replaces a lot of the ADB functions you might be used to doing. I'll just hit the highlights and we can come back to this in a future meeting. But install and uninstall of the things you put on there. If we're on the same Wi-Fi, let's see if this is booted yet. It is booted. All right, let's continue. All right. You can cast kind of quickly. And the big value add here is it's before the distortion happens for the lenses, so you don't have to work as hard to make it look okay. Same thing with screenshots. When you record videos, they don't just sit on the device, they get downloaded right after. So you're not seeing all that lens stuff that you normally see. But if you were to say go into pass-through mode, let's see if I can get my hand in here. All right, I have to wear it. There we go. You see it black out. It showed it for a second, right? And then it blacks out.
never showed it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's, again, they don't want what's coming through these cameras to get out to the apps, to get out to the internet, all the terrible things that'll happen with their cameras on their Facebook device. Lucky for us, our good old buddy Screen Copy still works for most scenarios. This ancient guy here. Oh yeah, here, I'll sell you on using ODB with one click. This guy says ADB over Wi-Fi, which is a 5-step process if you do it yourself. All right, let me unplug. Oh, it didn't work. Are you sold?
Take my money.
Good times, good times. What happened? Too fast? All right, we're back. We're on the same network. This should all work fine. You can also toggle metrics on and off. That's really handy to do without interrupting what you're doing inside the headset. Well, what the hell's happening in here? Oh, we're back. building Guardian.
It says on.
It says on, all right. For some reason, I'm still in room setup. Do you guys see my controllers, at least?
We see an ODH right now.
I think I'm too close to this desk that I mapped earlier.
Is there a window open somewhere you want to see? Hang on, I'm gonna move your water.
Thank you. I can vaguely see it through these terrible cameras. All right, so maybe I'm still in pass-through mode. I was. Too many tabs.
You're not streaming anything yet.
I know. How's that?
Just see the ODH window right now.
Oh, right, because I'm not streaming anything, literally nothing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So if that whole ADB over Wi-Fi setup worked, this will work. Oh, I am standing too close to the desk. You guys see that?
Window's open, it says it's connected. Get a little farther, maybe.
Still waiting for connection.
Anything? Son of a. All right. Clearly, this is a wonderful piece of software. You should all use it.
It worked perfectly earlier, I would say this.
It did.
And I'm installing it tonight or tomorrow for sure. There you go.
All right, here's our old buddy Screen Copy, who doesn't give a damn about not showing you what's coming through the cameras. But he can't do audio, so if you need sound, you got to do something else. Earlier tonight, I mapped some certain things in this room. Got my microphone. I do have hand tracking. Can I get by with a right controller only? I'll wear these. I think I can pull this off. I can vaguely see what's happening. Use the safety protocols. All right, here's back in VR. Does that look okay? Mm-hmm. All right, let me dismiss that menu. A couple of clicks. So I came in here earlier and set stuff up. You can see we clearly have a nice, beautiful, large couch. If we approach that, just start yelling if I get too close. We see the pass-through, right? And it turns out it's a Patrick.
Moving your water again, Marc. We're going to keep moving your water.
This is stuff that's been baked in for a couple of iterations, just the couch and just the desk. And what's cool about this, even if you're not a developer, it gives you the option to sit down and switch from a room scale game to just a stationary setup without going into the menu. So you sit down, you change it. I might as well sit down. I know. So now I'm not gonna stay in it, but you switch to couch mode, and now you're in a stationary boundary. It can be in a completely different room in your house, or even outside of your safe space that you used to play. And then you can switch back by just walking away from it. Likewise with the desk, they got some special modes where you might want your keyboard and stuff. It tracks keyboards. It doesn't make a lot of sense on a Quest, but on the next Cambria headset, it might make some sense. Now, beyond that, it lets you map other things, and that's what's new. And I believe I mapped this table. It's this little rectangle because it only does rectangles.
Oh, you got right there.
But you can see that it's built into the Guardian system now. So the upshot is, like you've all been doing for a long time, you just draw this big Guardian and then smack into your walls and furniture and try to remember where they are. Now you can actually take the time to map all your stationary furniture and have a relatively safe play area, because it will kick in the Guardian changes when you get close to it. Yeah.
Is it actually persistent?
Yeah, yep. And it does a pretty good job until you start doing multiple rooms. As you're building, you have the chance to do and undo. So let's show you what that looks like. I'll just add one piece of furniture. It's in your big settings menu under Guardian. And it's got this new room setup.
It's not experimental where I would have expected it to be. It's in Guardian.
Yeah, yep. You move that chair on us. So we're going to delete this chair because it's not there anymore. And your choices are couch, desk we covered, door. Still doesn't do anything special other than you can query for doors. Windows don't have to touch the ground, so that makes them special all on their own. And other.
If you pass through the window, does it call 911?
So it is literally just plugging in this. Hopefully you can see it pretty well.
Yep.
And this is completely manual. And because of the weird depth artifacts. So you can probably see depth stuff popping and unpopping because these Quest cameras were never designed to do this at all. It's a kind of a major miracle that they do. You kind of have to guess a little bit and judge. And likewise, you walk around your room placing these walls, and it's all just kind of eyeballed. But there's some nice snapping and stuff to help you out. And again, it doesn't want to have a peaked roof or a curved roof, just like Apple. It wants a nice flat floor, flat roof. And I can just go over here and add another chair.
Are you limited by just the normal max room size?
You can put your walls beyond the play space. The software they're going to approve has some really strange language about that all this newfangled wall and furniture stuff doesn't mean that people should be playing a game there. They should only still be inside their safe area. It's kind of just all various ways of saying they don't want liability when somebody gets hurt. I did a bad job on that, but you get kind of the gist. So again, the thing that's interesting about this is after you practice a little bit, it gets very quick. And again, it's now part of your Guardian. It gets used inside all your apps, even the ones that exist today. Sometimes it's kind of annoying too because it doesn't do that same pausing behavior that you've maybe seen in the past when you step out of your Guardian zone, because it's meant to be a little more interactive. So then they released a sample project called The World Beyond, and they also put it in App Lab so you don't have to compile it yourself. And this is the one that hopefully a few people tried out. Loading. Maybe I'll crank my volume up too and see if we can catch some of it. So this is a terrible space. It's designed for homes, you know, and when you've mapped your relatively safe room with 3 pieces of furniture, this works a lot better. But it's kind of designed where you start and essentially pass through. And you can see it's found bits of floor that it thinks are safe. This would maybe be where your carpet is in your regular VR space. And then it's just passing through the video feed wherever we've marked this other boundaries. And there's a super weird, annoying giggling sound. It's a good example of their spatial audio SDK. I'm gonna try not to die, because again, I haven't marked this stuff that's right here. So you guys to start shouting when I'm in danger. But there's some great examples in there to place objects and avoid furniture. They did a really great write-up of this project. It's not a nice one to disassemble and modify, but it's a great one to read the code and learn from. So like these balls have a special section just for placing them where they're not going to be too close to furniture. And this weird, creepy laughing is that guy over there. It died.
I see the green screen. I see the 5 ADB commands.
Oh, geez. Oh, allow USB debugging. Yes, please. Always allow USB debugging. Did it come back? No, it did not. Right as the creature came.
That was nice to ask. USB debugging halfway through. We assumed it's been okay for the first half.
You guys see it now?
Right now, yep.
All right. Yeah, so again, there's a bunch of furniture I didn't map in your normal space. You would never have this much. But one of these things, oh yeah, so it wants us to move on to the wall portion. This is actually the part where people kind of ooh and ah. If you've used a HoloLens, this has been the shtick since the very first demos before they even sold them, but not that many people have. So when you come over to your wall, you know, picture your room with 4 walls, or maybe you got a diagonal, you got 5 walls, and you just vaporize it and open up this big vista, and then peek through it. There's a spaceship over there. Marc, you had a good story about this moment.
Oh, I walked into my wall at home.
Yep.
You'll see there's a UFO in there, and I literally just forgot about it. It's like, I've seen the HoloLens down before, but the fact it's happening on a Quest just felt kind of amazing, and I forgot about it.
And all this crappy gray pass-through, you can imagine if it was color video on the new headset. So, yep. And just to speed things along, I just made some fake walls that aren't actual walls here in this building. And your ceiling too? Ooh. I think I
It's
did.
really great in a normal room size room that you are very used to.
Yeah.
It just transforms, right?
And there's this whole series of kind of these shticks that work super good in mixed reality, and the Hollands did all of them in 2016. With ridiculous art budgets, it wasn't clear why a $3,000 headset had like video games on it. Only three video games. So now we're kind of in this VR mode where now I can't even guess where the furniture is, so I'm not going to move around much. And they also integrated their voice SDK. So, hi, hello. Do you hear me, dummy? Come here. All right, F you.
I think you're supposed to feed him.
Oh, before he'll cooperate? That's on this other hand here. Oh, now all of a sudden the voice SDK is working. I believe it does need to connect to the internet. Jump?
I said connect to the internet.
Don't jump. Go away. Go away and die. All right. Switch tools. There we go. Chase the ball. Good little critter. And if I can aim it towards some furniture, it'll ricochet off. So you can imagine that's your table or your desk or your bookcase or whatever. And it starts to make a little sense. What totally doesn't make sense is Patrick's legs as our couch texture. That's the bad couch. It's getting worse. Oh, yep, he's already leaving. He's already in his UFO. Bye. Oof. So a little brief thing, but really fun to like go to your different rooms and check it out. Like we saw with the couch, it came in as a rectangle, but there's nothing stopping you from adding little rectangles for the back and the sides. There, I feel blind in there. Do you guys see that or no? This probably cuts out completely.
We saw it for a second.
Yeah, this is their protection of the video feed. I can get back to the thing that it's more stable. They try to block it, but screen copy's too old and ancient to consistently block. Why is it everything slow? Very slow. Maybe I'll quit that app. Holy cow, I'm gonna get sick.
Are you on 2.5G Wi-Fi?
I don't know what's going on, but I'm trying not to move my head so I don't throw up.
You have infinity mobile.
All right, there it is. Die. I think that uses a lot of CPU for what they're doing. So this comes in with kind of this pre-rendered couch that might not look like your couch. We did a chair over here somewhere. Mark, just yell when I hit you. There it is. If this was like a chair, you'd probably draw it back by just putting a rectangle on it. And that's kind of neat because then the occlusion works better, the video pass-through fits the shape better, and you can like ricochet things off of it or have snow come down and sit on top of it. Going back to this settings, setup, Guardian.
For those type of effects too, like if you've tried the Apple Eclipse app that uses LiDAR, it'll basically throw down confetti and snow and things on the actual objects around you in a pretty precise way that is pretty neat, right? You've seen that before.
Yep, and especially when you're just looking at these flat surfaces, nobody knows that it's a crappy cube that doesn't represent this chair well, because they're just happy that there's some snow in the middle of the table. So that'll definitely be the case out of the gate with the Cambria headset, but it does have a depth sensor, so it'd be completely insane to not have this automated like it is on the Apple LiDAR stuff. Let me just plug a window into here. I don't got a window. This painting's gonna be a window. Phil, your painting's gonna be a window. So this does actually get pretty quick. Windows are unfortunately stuck into the wall, so that's not perfect. But, so now looking around at these shapes, they're all cubes. The couch is a cube, you just can't see the sides. The desk is a cube, you just can't see the sides. The window, I think, comes through as a cube. And then really the API just gives you planes for the different walls that have been defined for the floor and for the ceiling, which is assumed in my case, because I wanted to do kind of this half height for the walls and not go all the way to the rafters. And literally that's all that's in the API. I'm going to take this off now before I get sick. So I wrote up the description a while ago and then kind of pivoted when I saw how little there is to explain to you guys about the API. But getting into the sample that they did a wonderful job of documenting it. Kill this off. Good picture of David though. Let's see, where's our camera today? Perfect, thank you. So this all became enabled right before AWE. It actually dropped one day before. And they do a good job in the docs. They're actually really well done. Just showing you things you would tag and then the different options for what can be tagged. This builds off of their Scene Anchor API that's been out there for 2 or 3 SDKs. They've now said that this is the final version. It won't change. Whereas the Scene API for this room setup stuff will change in the future a little bit. But these are literally all the things you can tag it as. And a couple things I wanted to point out with the sample app, which I believe right there is GitHub.
Do they have any kind of spatial query?
Yeah, but again, you're only asking for all the doors, all the walls, all the other things, all the windows. But it has helper functions to like let you place objects that are not underneath furniture. For example, those balls and the little noisy guy. They actually talk about that in here somewhere. Yeah, right here. Nice section on it. You can go right to the code, check it out, how they do it. One of the things you noticed was the pass-through. Sometimes it was in front, sometimes it was behind in their app. So that's not directly supported in the hardware compositor. So they spend a good amount of time talking about that. Essentially, the way it works at a low level is you can say that video texture is either behind everything or in front of everything. And that's not what you want. Nobody wants that. If it's your hands, you want it to be in front. If it's outside the window, you want it to be behind. If it's furniture, you want it to kind of be in front unless the little guy runs behind it, and then it's in front, and if he runs in front of it, then it needs to be behind him. They cover that in detail here. Short version is what they did for this demo, and probably what everybody will end up doing is you put the video feed behind everything, and then anything that doesn't get rendered, either it's an alpha clear or you never bother to render to it, shows pass-through texture, and you use a material that renders early in the Unity priority order, and that ends up getting used for like the chair or the table, and then objects that would render behind it don't because they fail the Z-test, the depth test. If you want to get super detailed, you can actually get into pixel shaders and so on, and they have a couple examples to let you do that. The voice interactions failed spectacularly tonight, but I've never had that problem before. Did it work good for you, Marc?
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, so who knows, internet or echoey.
I felt like I was speaking loud there on purpose.
Yeah.
Like you're talking, so it felt like you talked quietly, didn't hear it, so I didn't have a lot of background noise, so it felt like you needed to be talking loud, but it did work well.
Yep. Yeah, and so this project's kind of huge. It's around 5,000 files. You saw all the art assets, all the animations, all the sounds. It's neat for inspiration, and then go back to your project, which is simple and small, and pull over little pieces of it, not take this huge thing and try to modify it. It's a disaster. And one of the biggest reasons, I don't think they cover it right here, one of the biggest reasons it's a huge disaster is all that data, those boxes and so on, don't show up in the editor. They don't show up on the PC. They live on the headset. I feel like that's just gonna come later because you're not risking a lot passing boxes out of the headset and into the app. So I think that'll come later. The same way that the pass-through video eventually did show up in Unity, but you really have to try hard to get this weird loop going on the network, and it kind of fails, and you have to restart it once in a while. So I think that is coming, but because it's not there, iteration times suck, everything's horrible. These guys built their own stand-in that just generates a room with 2 objects in it, 2 pieces of furniture, completely outside of the APIs, but it's there for you to grab and modify to match your room so that you can do your testing right at your desk with your chair over here, your window over there, or what have you. I don't think I had much more to say other than that. Because again, I thought I was going to talk about an API, and the API is too dang simple to even talk about.
The spatial audio works pretty well. I'll say it's pretty easy to localize that.
Very good.
So like, I'm not sure how vertically it works, but it definitely,
Yeah.
when that thing makes a noise, you have to kind of find it with the flashlight. I was surprised at how good I was able to find, I could have my eyes closed and figure out where that was.
Yep, yeah, and then the volume changes like it should as you move towards it. And yeah, it's a good example of that. So yeah, that's kind of the basic stuff. People that tried this, did you map more than one room? Did you do a large space or a small space? What was your experience with it?
But a large office.
Yeah, and you put in a couple desks and.
Yep, a couple desks. We had like desks down long things, a big double door in the middle.
Yep.
That was easy to place. Did notice, it always assumes the ceiling is flat, and we have a
Yep.
weird like turn up at the edge, so I had to just try to eyeball where that corner would be.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing that is missing, so of all the choices I was able to map in the headset, they're all nailed to the floor, except for windows, which are nailed to the wall and they're completely flat. So there is no option to put in a divot or an air duct or anything on the top. I would assume maybe that'll come later. So it would,
Ceiling fan.
yep. One of their good examples when they're talking about you query this API and you want to do something interesting to the user's room, right off the bat, their first suggestion is find the bounding box center of their space and put a virtual ceiling fan there or a rug so they know the center. And that would change based on how your room layout is and what it calls the outer bounding box of your play space. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth playing with. I think it's going to improve as it goes. More than that, though, the actual mapping setup program, it's super annoying and confusing for 3 minutes, and then for 5 minutes, you'll get the order of the points wrong as you're laying them down. And so instead of a nice wide couch, you'll get like a trough that's super narrow and facing sideways. It's like a 10-foot long couch facing sideways with 2 long sides. But once you remember the order, you can just walk around clicking stuff in, and you can go out to your hallways and try to expand. Essentially, lay out parts of your room that you want to go behind walls and in and out of doorways and things. I've been doing stuff like that for a while, and my bright idea has always been to just rub a controller on the wall and get the plane of it. Go to a corner, rub 2 controllers, and get the intersection of that corner. This is a visual placement, so it's a little bit hit or miss. You got to kind of move your head around to refine the placement point. But compared to what I made over the course of a year, this is 20 times faster, and I don't have to write anything other than querying those boxes out of it. So it's very nice from that perspective. So there's nothing stopping you from taking it to the tennis court and mapping in the net and some of the lines. Maybe you put little things on the ground for the side barriers or something, and doing something fun like that. And I want to do some brainstorming and let me know, like, with this limited set of capabilities, like, what are some cool ideas?
There's some interesting mobile AR apps, like room planners and things like that. And all of them have kind of seem like one interaction well done. So if you push them all together, there's probably a really cool way to do that all. But like you're saying, like what's the height of your Guardian floor?
Yep.
You just tap the controller to, and that's the height. And your idea of like doing on the walls would be really interesting if you defined that, right? Or if you had 2 of them, it'd be easy, like that's the plane.
Yep, exactly.
That's the plane, right?
Yeah, it's true. You can sort of build on top of this and come up with your own little extensions to it, that you'll just have to interpret by the tags and the shapes that are coming in. There's some examples actually in this app where like overlapping objects can make it explode. Having slightly too many wall segments, I learned the hard way, makes it explode. We were staying at a condo that had a lot of bump outs and one really big room with a living room and then a kitchen and a counter right in the center. So I ended up with all these wall segments, and it turns out one too many for the sample app. Yep. But yeah, you've got this really limited set of stuff. It's just kind of neat to think of the ideas of how it can be used. But I encourage you guys to play with it because it is really fast after your first couple tries to go out and map a nice version of your living room and then have all this extra furniture, including the walls and the sample. Yeah, any random questions? We got anything on the YouTube stream? Anybody watching that? Yeah. Yes, it does. Yep. One of the things I forgot to show, it does support hand tracking. I freaking still hate hand tracking, even though they just released an updated version. So if you're used to old hand tracking up until a month ago, the moment you touch your hands, like they just disappear or you cross your fingers. So Quest 1 can't do the new hand tracking, only Quest 2 can, but all you're missing out on is being able to do this. That's like literally all it does better, is disappear less often. It's still finicky about the pinching. If I pinch away from the headset, it's bad. If I pinch sideways like a weirdo, like a crab, that's how we train people on the HoloLens. Just crab claws, pinch like this. You're like, that's not natural. And I don't care, pinch like this.
The world beyond does support hand tracking, but I do not recommend using it at all.
I agree. It's frustrating, yeah. Yep. Crushing your head. Yeah.
Questions from the stream, but
excellent.
Ryan Schaefer says hi.
Hey, Ryan, why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? All right. I don't know why we're looking at my Gmail, actually. It's not that exciting. There's probably something in there. Yeah, so we'll just move on then. And maybe, Nick, I'll put you in charge. I'll give you a little preview of what I had just kind of prepared, just so we have something. We're going to talk about Augmented World Expo, and the other one was the Microsoft Mixed Reality Dev Days. I think are the two big ones. The ones that seemed like they're too old, but hopefully you guys didn't miss out on, was Niantic released their object world placement. Anybody catch that? Maybe I'll dig that video up. And then Google showed a sneak preview of their tools for placing, I don't know how to explain this. You got your Google Map on your PC and you're placing virtual objects so that they can be found in AR later, but you're like doing that in 3D on your PC, and then you walk outside and they're by the building or by the shrub, wherever you place them, kind of a thing. So that mapping stuff is going forward, just not in Minneapolis yet. It's like San Francisco and like 5 other cities is where you can do it today. So, Nick, come on down. I'll let you drive. Here, we'll put your name here. There we go.
Perfect.
So you've gone to a couple AWEs, right? Maybe that's the place to start.
Yeah, so I'll start out with a little bit of background on myself, and is this I'm in the feed here?
Yep, you're on.
I'm Nick Roseth, as Zach may have mentioned, president of the VRARA Minneapolis chapter that I spun up a year ago. I have a consulting firm, Explore Design. I work with innovative companies to bring emerging tech like XR to business problems. My angle is generally more through the business lens of a lot of this stuff, so I'll probably be talking more so about that than getting too deep into the technical side of things. This was my second AWE. Last year's AWE was a little bit of kind of like the diet COVID version, so it's kind of interesting to compare last year, and some of my notes will do that. So I kind of have both a structured typed talk and then a completely unstructured scribbled version of the talk, because I've been doing a lot of writing about kind of some of the things I've noticed at AWE for specific industry applications, but also I'm trying to kind of take a step back and look at a much broader context. So what I've been thinking about the last couple days is basically what are the top 10 takeaways for me that walking away from AWE. Has anybody been to an AWE before? So it is pure chaos. So this year there were thousands of people. There were 400 plus speakers, 250 plus exhibitors, all specifically focused on the XR space, and it was it's pretty wild. So it's a big conference. It was much bigger this year than it was last year. You definitely get some of the biggest kind of presenters in the industry, both from kind of the user side in the enterprise or consumer side, and then also in a lot of the companies, like last year's John Henke from Niantic gave a keynote about building, a safe metaverse. This year, John Riccatelli from the CEO from Unity, kind of one of the first, I guess, of the 10 I'll start out with was last year was kind of right on the heels of Facebook announcing its pivot towards metaverse, and so that was kind of the big talk, right? It had just been discussed, and everybody in the industry is kind of like, that's using quotes when they talk about metaverse. So this year, it seemed like there's, I guess, some capitulation or acceptance that we have to at least deal with the term in the near term. So John Riccatelli from Unity gave his keynote, and he talked about kind of the evolution of this term and trying to define it and refine it. And so what a lot of people have said is basically the next iteration of the internet. So his addition to that, which I thought was pretty interesting, is he says it's the next evolution of the internet, but that in addition, it's always real time, mostly 3D, mostly interactive, mostly social, and mostly persistent. So adding some context into that, again, from Unity coming through the XR lens of what the metaverse is. But kind of across the board, I heard it used with less humor this year and more acceptance, and kind of let's actually try to take some control of what this term actually means. So that the metaverse is evolving in that context. So the second thing that I'll point out was that in the consumer space, last year there wasn't actually that many consumer-driven companies there. There was a little bit of Snap. What's surprising is Facebook, or Meta, was completely absent. That was a little shocking. This year, they were kind of all out in full force. So they had an exhibit, they were talking and pumping up horizons, but they also surprisingly didn't have any of the stuff that Zuckerberg just released this week, talking about some of the hardware projects that they're working on. So, TikTok was actually in pretty full force there. They had a on-site exhibit showing AR specifically is more installation based and kind of moving beyond just the hardware side of that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, talking about the social media context. And then Snap was there with a whole bunch of spectacles, trying to get people kind of aware of this consumer application and try to envision how they could see it being used. So the consumer market is definitely one of those things that continues to grow. There were lots of discussions around specifically beauty and fashion and commerce. So the consumer applications are definitely growing. My big interest is kind of more in the commercial side of things. And so that adoption is most definitely growing in a lot of the industrial sides of things. Some of the companies that were there talking about how they're implementing and using XR were companies like Northrop Grumman, NASA, Lockheed Martin, Toyota, and a friend of mine from last year who started at Blue Origin this year, who cannot say a word about what he's doing in XR at Blue Origin, because that's how they roll there. But I see this increasing enterprise adoption, which I think is going to be super important for kind of the proliferation of XR. We talked earlier about some of the healthcare side of things. There are a number of companies doing things in healthcare. There were doctors there talking about it for therapeutic uses. There's a company called Trip, which is a VR experience for meditation and mindfulness. They just raised a ton of money. And so places like Mayo Clinic, as mentioned, Johns Hopkins. And there's also more companies talking about it from the therapeutic perspective, patient experience, but also what's called intraoperative procedures. So it's actually making its way to an operating theater to help surgeons. It's also being used to help train surgeons. So one of the companies they're presenting was a medical device company talking about how they're using VR training, AR training tools to actually go out and show surgeons how their products work. The use cases also, beyond the industry expansion, the use cases are also kind of continuing to grow. Some of the existing use cases that were there last year are continuing to evolve in their application. And so things like, you know, as I mentioned, healthcare use cases continue to expand. Property management is looking more at the deployment of digital twins to create consumer experiences. Med device, as I mentioned, are using holograms. One interesting use case is remote collaboration is definitely, you know, here to stay. So using AR applications and virtual applications for remote collaboration around the world. One of the cool ones was actually McLaren, so the F1 car maker, using these remote devices to actually connect the engineers that are building these cars, the drivers, and then the teams to optimize these things to, you know, to win F1 series, connecting people from all over the world to work on these insanely fast engines. So that was a pretty cool use case, and you're seeing lots of those, you know, from Lockheed Martin, which has a really cool one I'll mention in a bit here. Now, in order to meet the demands of all these enterprise companies, they have a ton of challenges. I've talked to a number of them, and so, you know, Mayo Clinic has their own challenges because they have to deal with regulatory. They are literally dealing with people's lives. The enterprise companies, there still lack a lot of solutions for the actual content creation, management, and delivery of these systems. And so one of the things that I would say is a clear distinction from last year to this year is that just the maturity that's happening in the market and offering these solutions to companies that want to use them, but they're still challenged by some of those things. So an example of that is MDM, or mobile device management. So you talk to any enterprise IT group and they're going to shut it down because they don't want to deal with all these other devices that are going to break. And so we've dealt with this certainly in the construction space. There's a lot of, you know, opportunity for things to go wrong there, but there's not a whole lot of products out there that will actually do device management, user management, content management. So this year there was a bunch of companies that are out there to actually fill that gap. So one of them is called Manage XR, and the cool connection there is I talked to the CEO because they were funded by Rally Ventures. If anybody knows or remembers Sports Engine, that walked away for a nice cash out to NBC. Justin Kaufenberg joined Rally Ventures, and so Rally Ventures invested in, you know, Manage XR because they saw the opportunity. Probably similar to how Jamf became an enterprise management for Apple. They probably saw this opportunity. So Manage XR, Arbor XR, IBM has its own solution. So I think all of that is super positive because you're starting to see companies end up with fewer reasons that they can adopt this. Because I think there's a lot of really strong solutions out there, but some of the infrastructure and back end are needing to get there. Content management and creation is also another really big deal for anybody in the space. In the technical side, you guys know how to do it, you guys know how to build it, distribute it one way or the other. But enterprises are looking for turnkey solutions, and they want something that they can sign up and say, yep, we're going to use you, we're going to design in this platform, and we're going to push the content up, and it's going to get distributed to our users. We're still very early in a lot of that stuff. Many places are still on applications like Autodesk, but there's more solutions like NVIDIA. If anybody's heard of the Omniverse product that they're doing, I think that they were at AWE talking about how they're connecting and distributing content from these source applications to headsets. So there's a bunch of different products out there that are looking at streaming. So there's a company called HoloLight that's doing pixel streaming so that they can more effectively load this content up. Within that, in addition to the infrastructure stuff, I think the hardware is also evolving. There's more and more hardware companies that were out there this year. A few examples on the consumer side. Has anybody used Tilt 5?
Start talking next month.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is friggin' awesome. It is like, to me, I put it on, I'm like, oh, this is the gaming platform of the future in the living room. I mean, it's just hands down pretty cool. So Tilt 5 was great. They have tons of lines, they have tons of pre-orders. I think you can actually pre-order that application now. Sure. So that was a really cool one. There's also more and more consumer-specific lightweight glasses with very minimal AR representation in them. One of those applications is called Twos. So I read an article where Twos is pairing up with Adidas to basically have their running application and some of their sports applications move from the phone, and that content is now moved to the watch, and then that watch content will move to a pair of glasses. So some of those consumer applications are evolving.
Can you describe what we're seeing on the screen here real quick?
Sure. So woman, I don't know if anybody knows the story, a woman named Jerry Ellsworth brought this idea to the company she was working for, and they basically, she spent all this time working on it, and she said, this is trash. And so she said, well, let me take it with me. So she took it with her, built this incredible solution in this tremendous startup, and I think they're poised to just clobber the market with their desktop-based AR solution for gaming. I think it's so cool.
And for the gamers in the audience, that company was Valve, and Gabe sold it, all the IP to her for $5. But technically speaking, it's really unique in that the projectors aim forward out of the headset. They bounce back off this retroreflective mat, and there you can see it.
Yeah, so I played that game that was in that video, and it's basically, if anybody played Diablo from back in the day, it's kind of that 3/4 player view, and it is pretty amazing.
And one of their big pushes is real in-life social. So you have one mat, you have two headsets, you have people playing a board game together, and you can pretty well see their eyes through it. That's the other big thing is it's actual clear, it's actual wide field of view. It's actually affordable. I don't remember what they were quoting for prices here.
Yeah.
In the early days, but it's something like $300 per set of glasses because they're driven by PC right now, and in the future they'll be driven by Android. But,
yeah, so Tilt 5, Twos, some other lightweight consumer applications were there. One of the big draws definitely was the Magic Leap 2. They gave a keynote talking about their pivot to the enterprise. I walked into the exhibit hall. I was talking to a friend who ended up going to another booth, and then I finally realized, like, oh crap, I should go find Magic Leap. And it was like 40 seconds, and the line was all the way around their booth, and it was crazy. So after an hour wait, I finally got to try out the Magic Leap 2, and was pretty impressed by how light it is. It's got a much improved format over the previous one. It still has the attached puck. It's got a pretty good field of view. They have, I think, addressed some of the dimming with AR pass-through, like regular AR glasses, and some of the light requirements. Companies are definitely listening to the fact that they need to dim some of these things. So the application I saw in enterprise was basically delivery routing. So I was able to kind of walk in and see the entire town of San Francisco and using real-time data to actually see what shipments are moving around the map. So there's starting to be kind of more of the enterprise hardware like the HoloLens and the Magic Leap 2 merging with some of these more plugged-in real-time applications that I think are super cool.
Did your demo use a controller?
Yes, it did.
You can go back one slide, there's a little picture of it. How did it work?
Similar to other controllers I've used, I think it's a little different. You just kind of have a trackpad, a touchpad that you can do with it. But if you can use a VR controller, it works similarly. It would be great to not have that. They said that it does support hand tracking, but they didn't have it turned on at that particular moment. So maybe it doesn't support hand tracking that great yet. But overall, I thought it was really cool, and it was definitely one of the big in-demand things to check out at the conference there.
For the hardware nerds, those are cameras on the controller, just like the Cambria is going to have. So it can track behind the headset, below your feet, no blind spots. Yeah.
The other hardware that I was impressed with, has anybody tried out the VRARA XR3? That is basically reality. It is stunning. Last year I tried it out. What they do is they put you into a model. They kind of start you out with VR, and then they end up with pass-through AR. But they put you into a BMW, and you can look down through the car and down into the stitching on the seats with like incredible clarity. So the XR3, which is about $6,000, $7,000 device, definitely enterprise grade, but basically they spun that off into what's called VRARA Aero. That is about a $2,000 consumer version of that. So it doesn't have, there's a few things that it doesn't have quite the resolution, maybe a little more latency than the other ones, but that one won an Augie award as best hardware for the conference. And I would definitely see that as if they can continue to drop that price, it's going to be one of the better headsets on the market, just because their quality is so incredibly good. Beyond that, types of hardware, reality capture, of course, was a thing, whether we're talking mobile devices or other specific handhelds. There's a few folks walking around with some of the really intense capture ones, like you guys are showing kind of more of a consumer application, but like construction grade accuracy, millimeter level. There's a lot of those kinds of things that are on the market. So those were running around as well. Digital twins were also a big thing, whether we're talking about building digital twins or individual avatars, digital twins. There was a really cool use case. A company called Roseth and a construction company called Kojima were talking about basically this convergence of IoT, XR, and AI being built into new buildings. So smart buildings and basically designing spaces with a XR kind of mentality. And so, having location-based artwork or entertainment, and then having IoT cameras and AI built in to do everything with helping with building maintenance, to traffic patterns, to designing more interesting experiences for retail and malls, that kind of stuff. So the digital twins, I think, are evolving in their context of they're being built into more buildings today, and I think we will see the kind of the lagging experiences in the next few years about how that's going to change how we interact with stuff, whether it's on our phone or eventually with a headset. So then kind of building on that, one of the big things that I took away is definitely the rise of AI at the edge. So all of these headsets, all of our phones, edge computing is becoming everywhere, IoT, and the increase in abilities and capabilities of these edge devices to build more machine learning into those things, I think is continuing to expand. I saw that consumer applications, entertainment, manufacturing, and I'll just kind of give a quick example that I was just super impressed by. So has anybody heard of Scope AR? They are basically kind of a step-by-step instruction company. You plug in some BIM models or your 3D models, and you can step-by-step learn how to pretty much do anything. And so what they had is they work with Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin builds spaceships that go into space. So all the torque settings on screws, super important. And so they have a lot of training in QC that's involved with all of these things. So they had this demo where they have a plate that goes onto a fuselage, and they have a screw pattern that's associated with that, and torque settings for every one of those. And so I put on Microsoft HoloLens, I bring up their app. So it's using machine learning to lock the model into place when it sees the actual physical asset there. So it's not going to move. And then it step-by-step tells me the screw pattern, and it monitors that I'm getting the screw pattern correct. All of this data is getting saved into the cloud for use later. The super interesting thing was that then they had a smart tool, which I didn't even know about these things. So smart tools are, in this case, a torque wrench that's connected via Wi-Fi. It will actually track the torque applied to every one of those screws. So now you have 2 points of data that are confirming against each other. The screw pattern was put in properly, and the torque settings were accurate so that you improve your QC and your training. So there's so many very practical, tons of business value applications in so many manufacturing, type of capacities, construction. I think all of these things are starting to permeate into our consumer applications down the road. So finally, I think that the community at AWE as I'm sure you guys know too, it's a bit punk rock, you know, small community, but everybody believes in each other, and it's kind of a somewhat exclusive club. But that community is super strong. I mean, people there, they are just positive about anything anybody is doing. So if anybody gets a shot to ever go there, I would definitely recommend it. It's a super fun time, a lot of really cool people, and I believe that the sessions are all online. And you'd seen them. Are they free? I don't.
Yep, they're free.
They are free. Okay.
Yep.
So you can
Right.
you can go check out awe.live, which is super cool. It's basically a 365 platform that constantly has all of the sessions, and they constantly are adding new sessions. But I would highly recommend going and checking out some of these talks by some of these folks, because there's a ton happening, and that's really one of those events that kind of the global community comes together and talks about a lot of cool stuff. So that's kind of my takeaways from AWE.
What portion were people, vendors, I guess, and software vendors talking about using tablets versus headsets?
So there's a little bit of back and forth on that, because I talked to a company doing, so I met with a couple of awesome guys from Britain actually that are doing a headset called XYZ, and so a couple of examples where people are not finding these enterprise applications, whether it's Magic Leap or HoloLens, to do the deed is that XYZ is another company that says, well, in construction, this is a very specific application. It doesn't meet our needs, and so we're just going to go build the hardware. There's another company called Daiquiri that got $250 million and then just shut down one day. So if anybody remembers that. But basically they're doing that. They're doing full hardware, the entire stack, somewhat crazy, but they're, that is an example of pure head-mounted display. But then another construction company that I saw last year, they're kind of stepping backwards back into tablets, and going from a HoloLens to tablets. And I see some of that. I mentioned some of those problems because a lot of these companies, we already have the tablets. So in construction, all of those people out there have tablets today. I don't want to buy more hardware, and I don't want to have to support more hardware. And I don't have any MDM applications that support this stuff. So that's why I mentioned some of these as important things, because, tablets, in my estimation, in construction, it doesn't hold a candle to hands-free head-mounted displays, but we're not quite there yet. So I think there's a little bit of this back and forth. One other super cool, amazing application, if you can ever check it out, has anybody heard of a company called Red6? So Red6, they built their own custom headset. So they are training the Air Force to basically dogfight in the sky using AR. So they have a helmet, and there again, there was no solutions that they could actually do, so they went and built their own helmet. And if you talk about lighting conditions, you are in full sun, much closer to it than you are down here. And so they have found a way, and I tried it on, I saw a 360 video of the thing, and it is amazing how you can be looking straight into the sun and still see this enemy aircraft. It's just bananas. So I did see a lot more of those consumer-specific applications, Red6 building their own hardware, XYZ building their own hardware. Yeah, it's hardware has just exploded in the past few years.
Also, it does AR, well, it's flying around at 1,000 miles an hour, 500 miles an hour,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a quick shot of it.
The other thing I didn't mention, but I think it was super interesting or important to be aware of, is they keep focusing on making these headsets smaller. So we're talking about Magic Leap. I think they're going to continue to get smaller in some version of or another. So there were a few companies there that were talking about, well, how are we going to do that? And it's offloading more of the compute power onto another device. And so I think it was Verizon was there talking about high-speed 5G networks, and then something called Li-Fi that is using light for local networks in extreme speeds. So that, I'd say, is probably a trend that's also going to continue to develop, is basically any way they can shrink those headsets to make them more comfortable and have longer battery life, that is something that the industry has been screaming for, and that's something I saw at AWE, was that vendors are, product companies are trying to figure out ways to solve that problem. Any other questions?
Do you know how many people were there?
Oh man,
When we see this is probably a press day, right? It looks very empty.
That is what is called the playground.
Okay.
So the playground, there's not many people in the playground because that is way at the back of the expo hall.
Yeah.
So there's very few people there. It is certainly way bigger than that venue because it takes 45 minutes to get a beer and it takes half an hour to get a coffee. So they are not supporting. It's a great venue, but they're definitely outgrowing the Santa Clara Convention Center. I would estimate it's got to be north of, probably 3,000 or 4,000 people. Probably more actually this year.
Maybe I can share a couple of the things that I pulled together. I'm not sure if you'd be able to make it. Maybe comment a little side-by-side action here. So I didn't get to go. I really wish I had. Once I started watching the sessions, it had this feel, like I said here at the bottom, had this feel of the pre-2016 VR conferences, where it's big enough that you're sitting there in a prototype PlayStation headset and smacking it on the side to check the latency as the accelerometer bounces and comes back. And you pull it off, and it's the head of Sony R&D looking at you, asking why you're smacking his headset. Yeah. And like, oh, latency is really good. How'd you do that? He tells you how he did it because he's willing to share information. Like, it was a super magical time, and then the consumer stuff hit, and that was all that mattered anymore, was content creators and consumers and weird head straps and batteries, and Reddit turned it completely into a tech support forum. So that hasn't happened yet with AR, so I think there's 1 or 2 good years left for kind of the magical, about to explode market.
Maybe 3 or 4.
You think so? We'll get an Apple headset next year, and it's all, the world will change. So we covered Magic Leap. It's super exciting, like that clearly is the headset to beat. We don't know the price yet. So that's a question, but not for the people that need it. Snapdragon Spaces, did you attend any of that?
Yeah, so last year they basically released a preview of Snapdragon Spaces. I used it last year. I used it with the Lenovo device this year, and it's to me it seems, and I might be speaking completely out of turn here, but I mean Qualcomm is such a big monster in this space. It seems like with Spaces, they're effectively just trying to move up the stack, and really capture more value of the entire thing. So them releasing Spaces AR to kind of last year, the pre-release, and then this year to broad developers. It'll be interesting how they still partner with companies with their own development kits and still kind of push their own.
And it's weird to see this because you go through the feature set and it's every feature, right? It's tracking, of course. Local anchors, okay, great. Image recognition of what? I don't know. Object recognition of what? I don't know. Plane detection, that's easy. Spatial mapping and meshing, presumably they can do that. Occlusion, pretty much impossible. Scene understanding, we've already seen how far Meta has gotten on that. Hand tracking, yeah, it'll kind of work. But it's interesting, so the thing I'm kind of banking on this year for the AR crossover device is the Lynx R headset out of France. And they had announced a long time ago that Snapdragon was doing the tracking and room meshing and so on, and nobody had any idea what they're talking about, and it was this. So there's a number of hardware vendors that will be using this. They all have XR1 or XR2 chips in their headset, because that's required. Software couldn't possibly run on a different chip, like one of the older, cheaper Snapdragons. So it'll be interesting to see how successful they are, but there will definitely be a lot of hardware coming out. And like you mentioned, the Lenovo, it's like a...
They have one of the biggest booths there, so they are definitely, dominating conversations.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the differentiation happens when everyone's running the same hardware.
Actually, let's just do this.
Right.
Most are running the same software, like what's your point of view, form factor,
Right.
or user experience and how.
And And there's still a lot of companies there that are, you know, competing in that space with them. I just see it's, you know, I think, you know, the reality is you go to this kind of thing. I was having a discussion with somebody I met there last year, and you know, the reality is within 4 years, half of those companies won't be there. So you just, I mean, there's a regression to the mean. There's going to be a few companies that dominate, and might be Qualcomm.
So yeah, this software stack was in private beta. Now it's open to the public. The hardware dev kit is open to the public. It's $2,000 though. You get some glasses and a phone. So it's not really aimed at consumer. Not really at all.
Unreal form factor wise.
It is an Unreal. Have you done Unreal classes prior? Is there any difference?
Yeah, it's basically the same. Now, like, is that what glasses? What hardware does it come with? Is that the
This
Lenovo?
is it. Yeah, the Think Reality
Think
something
Reality.
3.
Yeah, so I know the guy running that program, and he's the guy that came up with VRARA in the first place.
Oh, interesting.
Good guy. I've tried Lenovo glasses twice, and they crashed both times. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if that's Lenovo or hardware, firmware, SDKs or whatever.
That'll teach me to use Google Image Search.
The thing I've seen with the Unreal stuff is the tracking is just really bad. It felt like it was meant for more like a desktop experience than being on the floor on the ground.
Sure.
Yeah.
It felt like it was tailored to that.
Yeah, I think any of that kind of style that doesn't have, you know, like HoloLens or Magic Leap kind of level hardware or stack is still pretty early.
So Dean, you recognize that chair? That's the sequel to the bowl. Just a couple of highlights here, just to point out to people.
Those are the Twos glasses.
Oh, those are twos?
Are those Twos?
I don't know. I couldn't
Oh,
read
there
those signs.
is. So actually, there's a few companies that have kind of that level of glasses. I think RealWear has one of those. Those are more industrial applications.
Yeah, and my guess was, where'd it go? Loomis makes waveguides that are not small and expensive, but also they're not incorporated into anything that's shipping yet. So that's a real working waveguide that's full field of view. There is no compute on there. It's all piped in through a cable, including power. But that's their big differentiator. Instead of doing something like this for HoloLens or Magic Leap, like this is the entire waveguide and the projector that goes with it.
Yeah, I did see a couple of those waveguide applications, and that definitely is like
Monochrome?
nope.
Yeah, this one's color.
Full color. I saw a guy give a talk about, you know, some of the really deep technical stuff there, and I think that's going to be a huge part of the future.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of the ultra edge, cutting edge stuff, and then all this consumer stuff, like make your own avatar in 30 seconds, and then get it downloaded. I was just going to let this play for a little bit and pause it occasionally.
Haptics, I tried those last year.
Yeah, how is it?
It's very early, because I mean, you think about, you know, how our senses are. You've got fine motor skills and, you know, gross motor skills, and just all of this sensitivity across things, and it's very early stage of kind of like, you know, I touch some flowers and this thing taps me on my finger, right? It's the nuance is definitely not there. But I mean, the cool thing is that whether it's gloves or suits, you know, XR is definitely moving beyond the eyes. It's becoming much more actually immersive, and I think in 5 to 10 years there will be much better solutions.
And yeah, this is just one of those outer edge things, but everybody that tried it was pretty impressed. I mean, all you gotta do is strap an air compressor to your back, and it activates these little tiny, essentially bubbles between your fingertips, so many of them, so it can actually feel something moving across it. And they're actually busy suing Meta right now because Meta showed the exact same technology.
Right. I think it was like 2 days after AWE last year that they did that.
But that's not a resistive haptics. It's all about texture and feel. Recognize those?
No.
Yeah, I don't
There
either.
were so many hardware companies there. It was just mind-boggling.
And there's gonna be a lot more thanks to Snapdragon Spaces. So which is that? That's the
That's the XR3.
XR3 with
That's the XR3.
the AR cameras in the front?
Yep.
Gotcha. So that's your $7,000 headset.
Are there
Here's
any trampolines there, is this your
No trampoline VR. That's old news. Demio. How many people played Demio on the Quest or on Steam? It's essentially it's really great. Simplified Dungeons and Dragons, so people can pick it up quickly. That for some reason was the big hot demo for Snapdragon Spaces, and everybody that tried it told this poor developer guy from overseas that he should instead be demoing on the Tilt 5. And he would say that he has no comments about that because I'm sure Snapdragon paid him off, with exclusive funding, be my guess. But they got some through the lens here. So there's two different kinds of judder we're looking at. I just wanted to point this out. Obviously the camera's wobbling. You can kind of see the interlacing judders that happen because of that. But there's another one that's a little more subtle and hard to pick up on, but it's happened on every one of these small form factor AR glass things that I've ever tried, including Nreal and including everything like it. And it's hard to ignore that wavy judder, but there's another one that's there, and I think it's what Marc was talking about, where if you're moving your head through space, it's steppy. It's not smooth like you're used to in VR, or even on HoloLens or Magic Leap. And that's because for VR we do that low persistence where that screen is actually black 80% of the time, and it just flashes images at you. And for this, they can't afford to be wasting that much light, so that it's just like a regular monitor. It's on the whole time, and then the pixels do move 60 times a second. But if your eye is tracking across that image as you move your head, it's a judder effect is what you get. And that was exactly my experience with Nreal. It's exactly what we're seeing here. It's exactly what everybody talked about. If you're holding still, like at a desk, right, turning your head, everything's fine. If you're moving, like, you get this weird juddery sense out of every virtual object, and you always will.
Do you have any of the light field displays in this video?
I don't.
So one thing that was really cool, I don't know if anybody has seen light field displays. So Sony had their spatial light field display. It's basically a box about this big. It sits on the desktop, but it uses light to basically create holograms, and it's pretty stinking cool.
I saw that at the NAB. I demoed it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Very impressive.
Yeah, it's super cool depending on what your application is, but you can actually see kind of a full 3D hologram. Oh, that's the Red 6. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a super cool headset. But yeah, these. So Sony's got one. There's one called Leia. I didn't get to see the Leia one, but
Leia was using cameras to track your eyes as you moved around.
Yeah.
Sony went with that too. I think the use case for those is trade shows. That seems like what they're meant for.
Yes.
Like what's
yes.
a real world application beyond?
Yeah. The Kojima construction folks talked about using that in some of their stuff, but it's hard to tell sometimes. Are you using it to market your construction company, or are you actually using it for real applications?
I think the Leia folks are intending it to go everywhere. Like obviously they want to sell a lot of it. Their spiel is not just that it's specific. It's just that why wouldn't every display?
They made a screen for the failed hydrogen.
Hey, you gotta break some egg.
Where's the omelet?
Which was the red camera phone.
Yeah.
It was supposed to have all the accessories.
Has anybody?
It had a light field display, so you could do glasses free.
Has anybody tried the Leia tablet?
No, we
can't really talk about it yet, but we did huge projects with
Oh, good.
crap ton of them.
Oh, when are those coming back to Minnesota?
What do you mean?
So we can see them.
Yeah. You can buy it. They're like $100 now.
Yeah, they're discounted.
We have a few demos. If you wanted to demo, you could.
And the big thing is it switches from a regular screen to a 720p mini viewpoint screen and back. So it's not stuck in weird 3D mode all the time.
It has like, you basically can run it as a 1440p full Android tablet, and then you can switch it to 3D mode, and then it basically takes a quad view, and it's basically a left and right stereo pair, and then a slightly off center on left and right pair, so that you can like rotate the device and see across those different planes of depth.
And so you guys,
And you encode it, if you're doing video, you can encode the video into like just 4 frames that are stacked or something.
you made top secret content, but on standard hardware.
Yeah.
So you could show that to us sometime.
Yeah, so we made Unity apps that
Yeah.
do all the It has some tools too to basically convert just about everything so that it's working.
Cool.
So you can bring in stereoscopic left right eye video and it'll play on the screen perfectly with that. Or you can take in a monoscopic 360 and it'll just do some magic where it just shifts the rotation a little bit and it'll generate a left and right eye automatically so that you can play with crowds.
Cool.
They have a new one, which is the one that they were demoing at AWE, which does, so the tablet basically has 4 fixed views. And the screen, they're not selling directly. They're trying to partner with third parties to like embed it and stuff. And so that example was that with the head tracking, they could get away from the 4 fixed views and they could generate on-the-fly views that are optimal for where your head is. And that's magic with 3D mapping.
Yeah.
And along the lines of the custom specialized headsets, Mark, what's he wearing on his head? What is that?
Oh, interesting.
What is it?
Looks like a HoloLens to me.
No, bigger,
Wait, hang on.
bigger. Oh, it's gone.
Think it died?
Uh-huh.
Meta?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Two of those.
yeah, you do. It's sitting in a box. So Facebook rebranded as Meta, which is ironical because only 3 years prior, there's a company called Meta that went bankrupt, and they were doing AR. Luckily, they didn't.
Kept that copyright.
They didn't get enough market share that anybody cares or remembers. But their IP actually survived. So this is called Campfire.
Oh, so
And-
that is the campfire.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. It looks like the campfire.
It's the lenses from the old Meta headset, and they've boiled everything down to a super specialized, super simplified use case because they don't want it to be only for super technical nerds. It's something they want people to put on for a meeting, look at something, and then take it off. And so they've got an active tracker that you just set in the center of your table. You put on your headsets and you stare at it, and it centers itself. And
Their
then you.
slam was always the weakest part of the whole thing.
Yep, so that's not in here. That was all replaced. It's just about the lenses. They're so huge because this is one of the few headsets that does what they call a bug eye mirror. It's a single, simple reflector that's super huge and super lightweight, but it looks crazy, especially from the side. The only other one that...
Walk down the street in, right?
Yeah. The only other one is Project North Star, kind of that custom headset. Matt and Paul and a couple people have them. That makes it look exactly like Judge Dredd. It's huge screens, but very light efficient and very cheap. Yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting that did survive, and there is an offshoot doing one very specific thing with easy setup and not custom apps or anything like that. Then the last one I wanted to show was Leap Motion, now called Ultra Leap, was just showing a variety of stuff that's going to use their hand tracking, which is probably still the best in the business. There's
That's
the
pretty
Pico.
cool. I did try that last year. I didn't because I already tried it, but I was pretty impressed with that.
I haven't gotten one yet, but I'm really interested in
Pico.
that Pico that does hand tracking from third-person view.
Yep. Yeah, and
You
this
can be next to a screen and you can track your hands.
this is their little combo kit, which is not as nasty as I thought it would be because it's kind of after the fact added onto the front of the headset.
Right.
Leap Motion, or Ultra Leap.
Ultra Leap.
Pico, yeah.
Yep, they sell it as a bundle.
So you need to Velcro it now?
And then there's the links. It's got it embedded right into the design.
Not look friendly.
No.
There's gonna be all kinds of decals.
These are cool.
Exactly. And so that's the one I'm waiting on this year. So it's designed to be very thin to have the cameras in the exact right spot for optical pass through video.
One other interesting
AR.
thing I saw was a guy with some patents around using just the eyes to move objects, and it was a little awkward. It may have something, but it's the dilation of the pupils. So if you look at something far, the object moves far. If you focus more, you can actually move stuff around with it. So I think eye tracking is a huge deal. It was a huge deal last year at the conference. I think it's a huge deal this year. There are a lot of companies that just focus on eye tracking in those cameras, and then they embed them in these hardware products. So there's a lot of companies trying to figure that out.
And then this is a big deal to a very small niche of very rich people. doing research. If you want VR with various brain sensors, you don't have to assemble it yourself anymore. You can buy a full thing for 20 grand. And I think it got a lot of press because there's like spikes that go down through your hair to touch your scalp.
We've like played with some like the EKG based.
Yeah, it's just dumb.
It's all garbage. They can't actually pick up enough.
But it's the craziest,
from your nervous system.
craziest and most expensive thing there. Yeah.
Like all of them ended up meditation devices because that was like the only.
The only thing, yeah.
And the last thing on the Tilt 5. So today, as shipping today, it's not quite in final form, but you need like one PC per headset. They kind of announced here in various interviews that they're going to eventually drive 5 goggles off of one PC if you want to do it that way. And the whole bit of magic that it even allows that is actually the time warp is all happening in the glasses. So it's very high frame rate. That's why people love it so much. It's not doing that judder thing that the $1,500 glasses from Qualcomm do. It's doing every subframe, every color refresh. It's updating the positions of everything like a HoloLens or Magic Leap, but they're doing it for $300 instead of $3,000. So eventually you're going to be able to drive 5 of these off of one PC or off of a phone per person.
So what's the actual FOV for this?
I don't know that they've said it specifically, but people say it's the widest by far of anything they try other than those crazy big reflector things like the campfire. The resolution's only 720p stereo, but yeah, people are just kind of blown away by the wide FOV. I guess you can kind of see a preview there on his monitor. It's wider than a table. Yeah.
If you're running on a PC, then you've got NA-LAC and everything else, so the resolution's.
Yeah, and they're kind of encouraging really graphically intensive stuff to differentiate from Quest. And so then the problem becomes who can author a game with 5 viewpoints that update 60 times a second? Like, what is that game and who made it? Nobody made it. Everybody assumes you got one PC and networking to another PC. So I think the phone thing will kind of come back eventually. But for the people that want to play over the internet, it makes huge sense. And it's super thin, like just insanely thin. And then you can see the color sequential DLP projectors shooting out the front. And a silly wand because they want to track at a distance and not obscure everything. It looks like a charcoal gas grill lighter.
Is there an expectation that the current hardware will work with an Android?
Yep, they've announced it will. It just isn't there yet for developers. So we're going to hear all about that next month. Yeah, that's kind of the big stuff. I'll talk really fast because actually the only person that cares is Ryan Foss, and he didn't show up. He had some excuse. But there's also the Mixed Reality Dev Days, Microsoft. These talks are now online too, so the link that I put into the Eventbrite is live now with all the talks. It's a very narrow audience again because it's this kind of high-end HoloLens stuff, but one of the huge takeaways was they're very, very deadly serious about being multi-platform. Every live demo they did a HoloLens 2, set it down, put on a Quest, and did the same demo, showing that you can go from AR to VR, you can do the UIs across, you can bring the content across, you just kind of change. Obviously you can't see the background very well on a Quest. But they did live in Unity Editor, they did deployed builds on HoloLens, $3,000, Quest, $300. So despite what's happening to their hardware division, they're very serious about the software. The big takeaways is if you've tried to use MRTK2, it was this huge monolith and just kind of blobbed in and took over your Unity project. Now it's split into like 15 packages. They're using open APIs to make it support as many things as possible. So they showed Quest because it's popular, but it runs on every Steam VR headset as well, because anything that supports OpenXR. So for me, the litmus test again will be that Lynx headset, which is going to ship with an OpenXR SDK. On the input side, they're using Unity input to abstract things. So they showed an example of same program, go change the mappings, and you switch from hand tracking to controllers, and then you switch to a second set of controllers with different buttons on it. The only other thing that super only Ryan cares about is remote rendering, so that edge compute stuff now has a new mode where it can render in real time 2 billion point cloud and then stream that to a HoloLens or whatever. And they didn't say specifically, but I think that's their $24 an hour tier of remote rendering. But their example case was, you know, until this beta started and until we started using it, we would have to take all this data, somehow put it into Polygon Mesh, decimate it down, and then try to render that. Now it's natively rendering its huge point cloud. And so right on site, as they scan this environment or something they're fixing or something they're building, like within 30 minutes, like literally finishing the scan, uploading, and streaming it back out, they can check it for quality and decide that they're done for the day and they can go home.
That's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Remote rendering, and they do super high detailed cars and stuff like that. That's one of the biggest issues, again, with trying to make these devices smaller is how do you offload compute?
Yep.
And it's going to be cloud connected with the fastest methods possible. And that those remote rendering, whether we're talking, I'm sure Autodesk will continue to build out their Forge platform, but I think in the Microsoft space, Azure remote rendering will be big. The other point I want to make too is, so Kronos Group, kind of the XR standards group, they were at AWE. There was a lot of talk about continuing to push OpenXR, WebXR, and then industry standards such as GLB file format, and then the Pixar USD Universal Scene format. So there's definitely a continued talk to move towards standards because everything is still so fragmented across platforms and use cases.
And then I didn't write it down here, but for the developers, it's interesting. This project, which is not in final form, but is in completely public preview and totally free to use. It's got working samples and everything. Shipped on Unity 2020.3. Recent 35 or something. The one that I was just showing for the Quest, 2020.3.18 or 16, like half a year old. And who can tell us where we are today on the cutting edge Unity?
22.2 something.
Yeah. So these vendors of hardware don't pick things from the last year that Unity makes. They go for the old stable stuff.
2021 LTS probably is the go-to for.
Yeah, and these guys don't even do that. They do 2020 LTS. Yeah. It's very interesting. You can run it on newer stuff, but then it's up to you to make all those samples work. They will work. It's up to you, though. I just thought that was interesting because those are old, and it fits with what I like to do. It's not screw with Unity breaking stuff as you import it. So, all right, that's a wrap. Anybody have anything else they saw or any random tidbits? We'll call it a night.
I think we have a loom that some of the concepts you're talking about. Oh, nice. So, we did the first one October 2019, second one February 2020. Then something happened where we couldn't do them for a while. So we were back. We did the 3 at the end of March. This one's before at the end of June. And then also my hope, and something I'd love to talk to Zach about people in this room is like at the end of September to kind of build it into a micro conference where we're doing more educational stuff like this, panels, artist talks, and it kind of just like becomes a little bit bigger, but still in our party at the end of it. So yeah, we're also looking for like corporate sponsorship and like ways to like actually help grow it because ticket sales can only be so far.
Yeah. So I think we're going to wrap up. Hopefully see some of you guys Saturday night here for ESC. And thanks for people watching on the stream or watching on the recording in the future. All right. Thanks, Nick.
Yes, thank you.